In the quiet safety of the family sitting room, Charlotte curled up on the familiar sofa next to her mother, Catherine. The room felt like a peaceful haven after the morning's frightening events. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, and Charlotte could see the palace gardens where she often played, a comforting reminder of normal, happy times. Catherine poured Charlotte a cup of her favorite hot chocolate from the service that had been brought by palace staff. The warm drink and her mother's gentle presence helped Charlotte feel calm enough to talk about everything that had happened since Queen Camilla had approached her near the library. "Take your time, sweetheart," Catherine said softly. "Tell me everything you remember, starting from when you first saw Queen Camilla this morning." Charlotte took a sip of her hot chocolate and began recounting the morning's events. She described how Queen Camilla had seemed different from usual, how the explanation about photographers and public appearances had felt wrong, and how the security officers had seemed uncertain about what was happening. Catherine listened carefully to every detail, asking gentle questions to help Charlotte remember important information. The young princess could tell that her mother was taking everything very seriously, even though she was trying not to worry Charlotte with her own concerns about the situation. "You were very brave, Charlotte," Catherine said when her daughter finished the story. "You trusted your instincts when something felt wrong, and you asked the right questions. Those are exactly the kinds of skills that will keep you safe throughout your life." Charlotte felt proud of her mother's approval, but she also had many questions about why Queen Camilla had behaved so strangely. "Mama, why did Queen Camilla want me to go on the balcony so badly? And why didn't she want to wait for you and Papa?" Catherine chose her words carefully, wanting to be honest with Charlotte while still protecting her from adult complications that she did not need to understand fully. Sometimes adults make decisions when they're worried or upset, and they don't always think clearly about what's best for everyone involved. Queen Camilla has been dealing with some difficult situations lately, and I think she made some poor choices this morning. Charlotte considered this explanation thoughtfully. Is Queen Camilla in trouble now? Will Papa be very angry with her? Before Catherine could answer, Prince William entered the sitting room, his expression serious but calmer than it had been in the corridor. He sat down across from Charlotte and Catherine, and the young princess could see that he was trying to decide how much to explain about the morning's events. "Charlotte, I've had a long conversation with Queen Camilla, and I want you to know that what happened this morning was not your fault in any way," Prince William began. "Queen Camilla made some mistakes, and we've had to have some very serious discussions about family boundaries and proper protocol." Charlotte looked between her parents, sensing that there were layers to this situation that she was not yet old enough to fully understand. "Is our family going to be okay, Papa? Will things go back to normal?" Prince William smiled reassuringly at his daughter. "Yes, sweetheart. Our family will be fine. Sometimes families go through difficult periods where people disagree or make mistakes, but that doesn't change the love we have for each other or our commitment to keeping you safe and happy," Catherine added. "Charlotte, what's most important is that you learn to trust yourself today when something felt wrong. That's a skill that will serve you well throughout your life, whether you're dealing with family situations or anything else that might come up." Charlotte felt comforted by her parents' explanations, but she remained curious about the bigger picture. "Can you tell me what Queen Camilla was worried about that made her act so strangely?" Prince William and Catherine exchanged a look that Charlotte had seen before when her parents were deciding how much adult information to share with her. She knew they were trying to balance honesty with age-appropriate protection. "There have been some stories in the newspapers recently about our family that weren't very accurate," Prince William explained carefully. "Queen Camilla thought that having you appear in public might help improve how people think about the royal family. But she forgot that your safety and well-being are more important than public appearances." Charlotte nodded, understanding this explanation better than the confusing morning events. She had heard her parents discuss media coverage before, and she knew that newspapers sometimes wrote things about the royal family that were not true or fair. "Will I still have to do public appearances in the future?" Charlotte asked, thinking about the upcoming events that she knew were planned as part of her royal duties. Catherine reassured her daughter immediately. "Of course, sweetheart. But every public appearance will be properly planned with your papa and me involved from the beginning. You'll never again be asked to do something like this without our knowledge and approval." Charlotte felt relieved to hear this confirmation. The morning's events had made her temporarily worried that her normal life might change dramatically, but her parents' reassurances helped her understand that the situation had been unusual rather than a new normal. Prince William's phone buzzed with a message, and he checked it quickly before sharing the information with Catherine and Charlotte. That was Captain Morrison. The photographers outside have been told that there will be no royal appearances today, and they're dispersing peacefully. Everything is returning to normal. Charlotte felt grateful that the media situation had been resolved without any lasting problems. Will Queen Camilla apologize to me for what happened this morning? This question seemed to surprise both of her parents, and Charlotte could see them considering how to answer. She was beginning to understand that the relationship between Queen Camilla and her parents might be more complicated than she had realized. Charlotte, Queen Camilla realizes that she made serious mistakes this morning, Prince William said carefully. I think she understands now that she crossed some important boundaries, and that's something she'll need to think about going forward. Catherine added, sometimes apologies come in the form of changed behavior rather than just words. What's most important is that Queen Camilla understands she cannot make decisions about your activities without consulting with Papa and me first. Charlotte processed this information, realizing that her parents were teaching her about accountability and boundaries while still showing respect for Queen Camilla's position in the family. She appreciated their balanced approach to what had clearly been a difficult situation. The young princess had another thought that had been bothering her. What should I do if something like this happens again? What if an adult tells me to do something that feels wrong, but they have authority over me? Prince William smiled with pride at his daughter's thoughtful question. That's an excellent question, Charlotte. You should always trust your instincts when something feels wrong, just like you did today. And you should always know that you can ask for Papa or Mama, or for Captain Morrison or DCI Brooks if we're not available. Catherine reinforced this message. No one, regardless of their title or position, should ever make you feel unsafe or ask you to do things that your parents haven't approved. Your safety and well-being are always the most important considerations. Charlotte felt empowered by this guidance and grateful that her parents were giving her practical tools for handling difficult situations in the future. She understood that her royal position might occasionally create complex circumstances, but she now felt more confident about navigating them. A soft knock on the sitting room door interrupted their conversation. DCI Brooks entered with Captain Morrison, both looking professional but relieved to see Charlotte safe and comfortable with her parents. Your Royal Highnesses, Princess Charlotte, DCI Brooks said formally. We wanted to provide a final update on this morning's security situation and to ensure that everyone is satisfied with the resolution. Prince William gestured for them to sit down. Please, join us. Charlotte has been asking some very good questions about what happened today, and I think it would be helpful for her to hear directly from you about how the security protocols worked. Captain Morrison smiled warmly at Charlotte. Princess, you did exactly what you should do when something feels wrong. You asked questions, you trusted your instincts, and you stayed close to people you knew were responsible for your safety. That's perfect protocol for anyone, whether they're a member of the royal family or not. Charlotte felt proud to receive this professional validation from someone whose job was specifically to keep her safe. Captain Morrison, how did you know that Queen Camilla didn't have permission for the balcony appearance? Captain Morrison's explanation was clear and reassuring. Princess, we maintain very careful records of all planned royal activities. When Queen Camilla requested the balcony appearance, we checked our systems and discovered that it had not been approved through the proper channels. That's when we knew we needed to follow standard protocol and contact your parents. DCI Brooks added, Princess Charlotte, our job is to protect you not just from outside threats, but also from any situation that might not be in your best interests, regardless of who is involved. That's what we did today, and that's what we'll always do. Charlotte felt deeply grateful for the dedication that these professionals showed to her well-being. She was beginning to understand that her safety depended on a network of people who took their responsibilities very seriously. Catherine had a question for the security team. What additional measures will be put in place to prevent similar situations in the future? Captain Morrison's response was thorough and reassuring. Your Royal Highness, We're implementing enhanced authorization procedures for any requests involving Princess Charlotte's schedule or public appearances. All such requests will require explicit confirmation from both parents before any action is taken. Prince William nodded approvingly. That sounds appropriate. Charlotte's schedule should never be changed without Catherine and me being directly involved in the decision. Charlotte listened to these arrangements with interest, understanding that the adults in her life were working together to create systems that would protect her while still allowing her to fulfill her royal duties appropriately. DCI Brooks had one final point to share. Princess Charlotte, I want you to know that what you experienced today was very unusual. The vast majority of royal activities are planned carefully with everyone's safety and comfort in mind. Today's events don't represent how things normally work. Charlotte appreciated this reassurance, as she had been worried that her royal life might become unpredictable or stressful. Thank you for protecting me today. I felt much safer when you arrived. After Captain Morrison and DCI Brooks left the sitting room, Charlotte settled back on the sofa with her parents, feeling completely secure and loved. The morning's frightening events had been resolved, and she had learned valuable lessons about trusting herself and relying on the people who were genuinely responsible for her well-being. Catherine suggested that Charlotte might want to spend some quiet time reading in her room before lunch, giving her an opportunity to process everything that had happened. Charlotte agreed, feeling ready for some peaceful solitude after the morning's intensity. As she prepared to leave the sitting room, Charlotte had one more question for her parents. Will Queen Camilla still be part of family gatherings and celebrations? Prince William's answer was honest, but diplomatic. Yes, Charlotte. Queen Camilla is part of our family, and families work through their problems together. But there will be much clearer boundaries about everyone's roles and responsibilities, especially when it comes to decisions about you. Charlotte nodded, satisfied with this explanation. She hugged both her parents tightly, feeling grateful for their protection and guidance throughout the difficult morning. As she walked through the palace corridors toward her room, Charlotte reflected on everything she had learned. She felt proud of herself for trusting her instincts, grateful for the security staff who had protected her, and confident in her parents' ability to handle complex family situations. The young princess also felt a new understanding of her own strength and judgment. The morning's events had shown her that she could navigate difficult situations by staying calm, asking the right questions, and trusting the people who were genuinely committed to her well-being. In her room, Charlotte sat by the window overlooking the palace gardens and thought about how the day had started with such simple plans to read in the library. She smiled as she realized that even though the morning had been frightening and confusing, it had ended with her feeling more confident about herself and more secure in her family's love and protection. The young princess picked up the horse book she had been carrying when Queen Camilla first approached her, and she began reading where she had left off, grateful to return to the peaceful, normal activity that she had originally planned for her morning. Outside her window, the palace grounds were quiet and serene, with no sign of the earlier media gathering or the morning's dramatic events. Charlotte felt comforted by this return to normalcy and looked forward to the rest of her day proceeding according to the careful, loving plans that her parents always made for her safety and happiness. As she read her book, Charlotte occasionally looked up at the peaceful garden view and felt deeply grateful for all the people who had worked together that morning to protect her and ensure that her royal duties would always be carried out in ways that prioritized her well-being above all other considerations. The morning that had begun with confusion and fear had ended with valuable lessons, stronger security protocols, and a deeper understanding of her own strength and the network of people committed to her protection throughout her life as a member of the royal family. The familiar footsteps that Charlotte had been hoping to hear belonged to Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Brooks, the head of the Royal Protection Squad. DCI Brooks had been Charlotte's personal protection officer since birth and knew the young princess better than almost anyone outside her immediate family. Her arrival in the corridor brought immediate relief to Charlotte and visible tension to Queen Camilla. DCI Brooks assessed the situation quickly, her trained eyes taking in the positioning of everyone present, the obvious stress on Charlotte's face, and the confrontational stance between Queen Camilla and Captain Morrison. Years of experience had taught her to read body language and tension levels, and she could see immediately that something was very wrong. "Princess Charlotte," DCI Brooks said calmly, "I believe your parents are looking for you. They've returned to the palace earlier than expected and would like to see you in the family quarters immediately." Charlotte's face lit up with relief and joy. The mention of her parents' return meant that this confusing and frightening situation would soon be resolved. She took a step toward DCI Brooks, grateful to see someone she trusted completely. Queen Camilla stepped forward, blocking Charlotte's path once again. "Detective Brooks, Princess Charlotte has commitments here that must be fulfilled before she can return to her parents. There are public expectations that cannot be ignored." DCI Brooks maintained her professional composure, but Charlotte could see the steel in her eyes that appeared whenever she was dealing with a potential threat to royal family members. "Your Majesty, I have explicit instructions from their Royal Highnesses to escort Princess Charlotte to them immediately upon their return. Those instructions take priority over all other considerations." The corridor seemed to hold its breath as the two women faced each other, each representing different aspects of royal authority and protocol. Charlotte watched the exchange with growing understanding that this was about much more than a simple disagreement about her schedule. Queen Camilla's voice took on a sharp edge that Charlotte had never heard before. "Detective Brooks, I am giving you a direct order as Queen of England. Princess Charlotte will accompany me to the balcony for a public appearance that has already been scheduled and announced to the media." DCI Brooks did not flinch at the royal command. Her years of training and experience had prepared her for exactly this type of situation where competing authorities created potential conflicts. "Your Majesty, my oath is to protect the members of the royal family, including protecting them from situations that may not be in their best interests. Princess Charlotte's parents have legal guardianship, and their instructions supersede all other considerations." Charlotte felt immensely proud of DCI Brooks for standing firm in the face of Queen Camilla's anger. The young princess had always known that DCI Brooks was brave and professional, but seeing her defend protocol and parental authority against royal pressure demonstrated a level of integrity that impressed Charlotte deeply. The sound of additional footsteps echoed through the corridor, and Charlotte turned to see more members of the Royal Protection Squad arriving. Their presence suggested that word of the confrontation had spread through the palace security network, and backup was being positioned in case the situation escalated further. Among the arriving officers, Charlotte recognized Sergeant Williams, who had been part of her security detail for 3 years. His calm, steady presence had always made her feel safe during public events and travel. Seeing him now reinforced her confidence that the security team would protect her regardless of pressure from other sources. Queen Camilla noticed the increased security presence and seemed to realize that her position was becoming untenable. However, instead of backing down, her determination appeared to intensify. "This is an unacceptable challenge to royal authority. I will not tolerate this insubordination from palace staff." DCI Brooks remained calm in the face of Queen Camilla's escalating anger. "Your Majesty, this is not about royal authority. This is about following established protocols that exist to protect all members of the royal family, especially minor children who cannot make these decisions for themselves." Charlotte found herself fascinated by DCI Brooks' ability to remain respectful while firmly maintaining her position. The young princess realized she was witnessing a masterclass in how to handle difficult situations with grace and professionalism. The stalemate was broken by the arrival of Private Secretary James Henderson, one of the most senior palace officials responsible for coordinating royal schedules and public appearances. His presence immediately commanded attention from everyone in the corridor, as his authority was recognized by all parties involved. "Your Majesty, Detective Brooks, Captain Morrison," Mr. Henderson said, addressing each person formally. "I need to inform you that there has been a significant development regarding today's events that requires immediate attention." Charlotte watched as all the adults turned toward Mr. Henderson, clearly recognizing that his arrival might provide a resolution to the conflict. The young princess hoped that whatever development he mentioned would support her desire to avoid the balcony appearance and return to her parents. Mr. Henderson's expression was serious, but controlled as he continued speaking. I have just received confirmation that the media gathering outside was not officially scheduled or authorized by the Palace Communications Office. There appears to have been some miscommunication about today's royal activities. Queen Camilla's face paled slightly at this announcement. Charlotte could see that this information undermined the Queen's earlier claims about scheduled media appearances and official expectations. DCI Brooks stepped forward, her professional instincts clearly engaged. Mr. Henderson, are you saying that the media presence outside was not coordinated through proper palace channels? Mr. Henderson nodded gravely. That is correct. Furthermore, their Royal Highnesses have explicitly stated that no public appearances were planned for Princess Charlotte today, and they have expressed serious concerns about any unauthorized attempts to alter her schedule. Charlotte felt a wave of validation wash over her as Mr. Henderson's words confirmed what her instincts had been telling her all along. The situation Queen Camilla had described was not legitimate, and her parents had indeed not approved of any balcony appearance. Queen Camilla's composure began to crack under the weight of these revelations. There must be some mistake. I was informed that this appearance was necessary for royal family relations with the media. Mr. Henderson's response was diplomatic but firm. Your Majesty, all official royal appearances must be coordinated through the proper channels to ensure security, legal compliance, and family consent. No such coordination occurred for today's proposed event. Charlotte watched Queen Camilla's expression change from anger to something that looked like panic. The young princess began to understand that Queen Camilla had been acting without proper authorization, possibly driven by motivations that had nothing to do with legitimate royal duties. DCI Brooks took advantage of the shift in dynamics to reassert her position. Given this information, I must insist on escorting Princess Charlotte to her parents immediately. Any further delay would be inconsistent with both security protocols and family wishes. Charlotte nodded eagerly, grateful that the adults who were supposed to protect her were finally able to do so without conflicting instructions. She began moving toward DCI Brooks, ready to leave this uncomfortable situation behind. However, Queen Camilla made one final attempt to maintain control. She stepped directly in front of Charlotte, her desperation becoming increasingly apparent. Charlotte, you don't understand the importance of this moment. There are things happening in this family that require us to present a united front to the public. Charlotte looked up at Queen Camilla with a mixture of sadness and confusion. Your Majesty, Papa, and Mama have always taught me that we should never do things in secret or without proper planning. If this is important for the family, why didn't they know about it? The question, asked with the direct honesty that only a child could deliver, seemed to strike Queen Camilla deeply. For a moment, her mask of authority slipped entirely, revealing someone who looked lost and uncertain rather than commanding and confident. DCI Brooks gently placed her hand on Charlotte's shoulder. Princess, your parents are waiting for you, and I think they can explain everything much better than anyone else here. Charlotte felt grateful for DCI Brooks' gentle guidance and clear prioritization of her safety and well-being. The young princess realized that she had learned an important lesson about trusting her instincts and the people who were genuinely responsible for her protection. As Charlotte began to walk with DCI Brooks toward the family quarters, Queen Camilla made one last desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. She reached out and grasped Charlotte's other arm, pulling the young princess back toward her with surprising force. Charlotte, I am ordering you to come with me right now, Queen Camilla said, her voice carrying a note of desperation that frightened Charlotte more than her earlier anger had. The physical contact crossed a line that immediately activated every protective instinct in the security personnel present. DCI Brooks moved swiftly but carefully, positioning herself between Queen Camilla and Charlotte while Captain Morrison and his officers stepped forward to provide additional support. Your Majesty, I must ask you to release Princess Charlotte immediately, DCI Brooks said, her voice carrying unmistakable authority despite her respectful tone. Physical restraint of any royal family member without proper justification is not acceptable under any circumstances. Charlotte felt scared as Queen Camilla's grip on her arm tightened rather than loosened. The young princess had never experienced anything like this from any member of her family, and She began to understand that Queen Camilla was not behaving normally or rationally. Captain Morrison stepped forward with backup from 2 additional officers. "Your Majesty, we must insist that you step away from Princess Charlotte and allow us to escort her to her parents as instructed." The corridor had become a tense standoff, with Charlotte caught in the middle between competing authorities and unclear motivations. The young princess looked around at all the serious adult faces and felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation she had found herself in. At that critical moment, the sound that Charlotte had been hoping to hear all morning finally reached her ears. The unmistakable voices of her parents, Prince William and Catherine, could be heard approaching rapidly through the palace corridors, accompanied by what sounded like additional security personnel. The effect on everyone present was immediate and dramatic. Queen Camilla's grip on Charlotte's arm loosened as she realized that the situation was about to change completely. DCI Brooks and Captain Morrison both looked relieved to know that the ultimate authority in Charlotte's life was about to arrive and resolve the conflict. Charlotte called out toward the approaching voices, "Papa, Mama, I'm here." The response was immediate as Prince William's voice called back, "Charlotte, we're coming, sweetheart. Stay exactly where you are." Queen Camilla seemed to realize that her position had become completely untenable. She released Charlotte's arm and stepped back, her expression shifting from desperation to resignation as she prepared to face the consequences of her actions. Charlotte moved quickly toward the sound of her parents' voices, feeling safer with each step that took her away from Queen Camilla and closer to the people she trusted most in the world. DCI Brooks stayed close beside her, maintaining her protective position while allowing Charlotte to move freely. The sound of Prince William and Catherine's approach grew louder, and Charlotte could tell from their pace that they were moving with urgent purpose. She knew that they had been informed about what was happening and were coming to resolve the situation immediately. As her parents rounded the corner into the corridor, Charlotte felt a tremendous wave of relief wash over her. Prince William's expression was serious and determined, while Catherine's face showed a mixture of concern for Charlotte and controlled anger at the situation that had developed. "Charlotte, come here immediately," Prince William said, his voice carrying absolute authority, but also warmth and reassurance for his daughter. Charlotte ran to her father, feeling completely safe for the first time all morning as his arms wrapped around her protectively. She looked up at his face and could see that he was angry about what had happened, but his anger was directed at the situation rather than at her. Catherine knelt down to Charlotte's level, examining her carefully to make sure she was unharmed. "Sweetheart, are you all right? Did anyone hurt you or make you feel unsafe?" Charlotte considered the question carefully, wanting to be honest, but also not wanting to create more problems. "I felt scared and confused, Mama. Queen Camilla wanted me to go on the balcony for pictures, but it didn't feel right because you and Papa weren't here." Prince William's expression hardened as he turned to face Queen Camilla, who had remained silent since his arrival. "We need to discuss this situation immediately, but first I want Charlotte safely away from here." Catherine stood up and took Charlotte's hand gently. "Come with me, darling. We'll go to our private sitting room where you can tell us everything that happened, and then we'll make sure nothing like this happens again." Charlotte nodded eagerly, grateful to finally be with her parents and knowing that they would protect her and handle whatever had caused Queen Camilla to behave so strangely. As they began to walk away from the confrontation, she could hear Prince William beginning a conversation with Queen Camilla that sounded serious and stern. DCI Brooks accompanied Charlotte and Catherine toward the family quarters, maintaining her protective role while allowing the family to reunite properly. Charlotte felt grateful for all the palace staff who had protected her during the confusing morning, especially when she had not fully understood what was happening. As they walked through the palace corridors, Catherine spoke quietly to Charlotte. "Sweetheart, you did exactly the right thing by trusting your instincts and asking questions when something felt wrong. We're very proud of how you handled a difficult situation." Charlotte felt a sense of pride mixed with relief as she realized that her parents approved of how she had responded to Queen Camilla's unusual behavior. The young princess understood that she had learned important lessons about trusting herself and the people who were truly responsible for her safety and well-being. The morning that had started so peacefully with plans to read in the library had become a complex lesson in family dynamics, protocol, and personal safety. Charlotte knew that there would be more conversations with her parents about what had happened and what it meant for the royal family going forward. As they reached the safety of the family quarters, Charlotte could hear that the conversation between Prince William and Queen Camilla was continuing in the corridor behind them. She knew that her parents would handle whatever problems had caused the morning's events, and she felt grateful to be safely away from the confusion and conflict. Catherine sat down with Charlotte in their private sitting room, ready to listen to her daughter's full account of the morning's events and to provide the comfort and explanation that Charlotte needed to understand what had happened to her. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace as Princess Charlotte walked quietly through the East Wing corridors. At 9 years old, she had learned to move through the palace with careful steps, always aware that every sound echoed through the grand hallways. Her small hands clutched a leather-bound book about horses, one of her favorite subjects that she hoped to discuss with her grandfather during their planned morning meeting. The palace felt different today. There was an unusual tension in the air that even Charlotte could sense. Staff members whispered in hushed tones as they passed, and several meetings had been canceled without explanation. Her parents, Prince William and Catherine, had left early for an emergency engagement, leaving Charlotte in the care of the palace staff and under the watchful eye of Queen Camilla. Charlotte made her way toward the library, her favorite quiet space in the enormous palace. The room held thousands of books from floor to ceiling, with comfortable reading chairs positioned near tall windows that overlooked the palace gardens. She had permission to spend her mornings there when not attending her private lessons, and the librarian, Mrs. Henderson, always made sure she had interesting books about animals and adventure stories. As she approached the library doors, Charlotte heard raised voices coming from the nearby morning room. She recognized Queen Camilla's sharp tone immediately, though she could not make out the exact words. The voices grew louder, and Charlotte hesitated, unsure whether she should continue to the library or find another route through the palace. The argument seemed to involve several people, including what sounded like palace security staff. Charlotte had been taught never to eavesdrop on adult conversations, especially those involving palace business, but the intensity of the discussion made her pause. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible as footsteps approached in the corridor. Queen Camilla emerged from the morning room, her face flushed with anger and her usual composed demeanor completely absent. Behind her followed two men in dark suits who Charlotte recognized as senior palace security officers. Their expressions were serious, and one of them spoke quietly into a small communication device attached to his collar. Charlotte quickly opened her book and pretended to read, hoping to avoid drawing attention to herself. However, Queen Camilla spotted her immediately and approached with determined steps. The young princess felt her stomach tighten with nervousness as the queen's shadow fell across her book. There are photographers and journalists gathering outside, and they specifically want to see you on the balcony for some pictures. It would be good for the royal family's image right now. Charlotte felt uncomfortable with this explanation. Her parents had always been very careful about her public appearances, especially unplanned ones. They insisted on being present for any official photographs or public events, and they had never mentioned anything about a balcony appearance today. Shouldn't we wait for Papa and Mama to return? Charlotte asked politely, trying to remember the proper protocol her parents had taught her. They usually help me prepare for public appearances. Queen Camilla's patience appeared to be wearing thin. She reached down and took Charlotte's arm, not roughly but with clear intention. Your parents are dealing with other urgent matters right now. As queen, I can make decisions about family appearances when necessary. The press is waiting, and we cannot keep them waiting too long. Charlotte felt increasingly uncomfortable as Queen Camilla began to guide her away from the library and toward the main palace corridors that led to the famous balcony overlooking the palace courtyard. The young princess had appeared on that balcony several times during major celebrations, but always with her entire family present and always with careful planning and preparation. The security officers followed behind them, but Charlotte noticed they seemed uneasy about something. One of them spoke quietly into his communication device again, and she caught fragments of words that sounded like confirm authorization and family protocol. As they walked through the corridors, Charlotte tried to think of reasons to delay or avoid the balcony appearance. She remembered her parents' teachings about being polite, but also being smart about unusual situations. Something about this felt wrong, even though she could not exactly identify what troubled her. "Your Majesty, I don't think I'm dressed properly for photographs," Charlotte said, looking down at her simple morning dress and casual shoes. "Mama always makes sure I'm properly dressed for public appearances." Queen Camilla barely glanced at Charlotte's outfit. "You look perfectly fine, dear. Sometimes spontaneous appearances are more authentic and appealing to the public. They want to see you as a normal child, not always in formal attire." Charlotte knew this reasoning did not match what her parents had taught her about royal protocol and public appearances. Her father and mother had always emphasized that every public moment was important and required proper preparation. They would never approve of an unplanned balcony appearance, especially without their knowledge or presence. The group continued walking toward the balcony, passing through increasingly formal areas of the palace. Charlotte noticed more staff members watching their progress with concerned expressions. Several times, palace workers approached the security officers and engaged in brief, quiet conversations that seemed urgent. As they reached the final corridor before the balcony entrance, Charlotte could hear the sounds of a crowd gathering outside. There were indeed photographers and journalists present, just as Queen Camilla had said. However, the noise level suggested a much larger gathering than would be typical for a simple royal photograph session. Charlotte's discomfort grew stronger as they approached the balcony doors. Through the windows, she could see the flash of cameras and the movement of many people in the courtyard below. This was clearly a significant media event, not the casual photograph session that Queen Camilla had described. "Your Majesty, this seems like a very big event," Charlotte said, stopping just before the balcony entrance. "Are you sure Papa and Mama know about this? They always prepare me for big events like this." Queen Camilla turned to face Charlotte, and, for a moment, her composed mask slipped entirely. The young princess could see frustration, anger, and something that looked almost like desperation in the queen's eyes. It was an expression that frightened Charlotte and made her want to run back to the safety of the library. "Charlotte, you are going to come out on that balcony with me right now," Queen Camilla said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "There are things happening in this family that you don't understand, and sometimes we all have to do things we don't want to do for the good of the monarchy." Charlotte took a step backward, her instincts telling her that something was very wrong with this situation. The security officers exchanged glances, and one of them spoke quietly into his device again. This time, Charlotte clearly heard him say, "We need immediate clarification on authorization for this appearance." The young princess realized that even the security staff were uncertain about what was happening. This gave her courage to speak up more firmly. "I want to call Papa and Mama before I go out there. They should know about this." Queen Camilla's expression hardened completely. She reached for Charlotte's arm again, this time with less gentleness. "You will do as I say, Charlotte. I am the queen, and you will follow my instructions." Charlotte pulled back from Queen Camilla's grasp, her heart beating rapidly with fear and confusion. She had never seen any adult in her family behave this way, and she knew instinctively that her parents would not approve of what was happening. At that moment, one of the security officers stepped forward, his expression professional but firm. "Your Majesty, I've just received word that their Royal Highnesses are returning to the palace immediately. Perhaps it would be appropriate to wait for their arrival before proceeding with any public appearances." Queen Camilla whirled around to face the security officer, her composure completely gone. "I am giving you a direct order as queen. You will escort Princess Charlotte to the balcony immediately, and you will not question my authority in this matter." The security officer remained calm, but resolute. "With respect, Your Majesty, protocol requires parental consent for unscheduled public appearances involving minor members of the royal family. I cannot authorize this without confirmation from the Prince and Princess of Wales." Charlotte felt a wave of relief wash over her as she realized that the security staff were following proper protocol, even when faced with direct orders from the Queen. She moved closer to the security officer, feeling safer near someone who was clearly thinking about her best interests. Queen Camilla's anger reached a boiling point. "How dare you question my authority? I am the Queen of England, and I will not be told what I can and cannot do with members of my own family." The confrontation was interrupted by the sound of rapid footsteps in the corridor behind them. Charlotte turned to see Captain Morrison, the head of palace security, approaching with several additional officers. His expression was serious but controlled, and Charlotte immediately felt safer seeing him arrive. Captain Morrison had been responsible for palace security throughout Charlotte's entire life, and she trusted him completely. He had always been kind to her while maintaining proper protocol, and her parents spoke of him with great respect and confidence. "Your Majesty," Captain Morrison said, addressing Queen Camilla with professional courtesy, "I need to speak with you immediately about some urgent security concerns that have arisen." Queen Camilla looked between Captain Morrison and Charlotte, her frustration evident. The young princess could see that the queen was calculating her options, trying to decide whether to continue pushing for the balcony appearance or to address whatever Captain Morrison needed to discuss. The moment of hesitation gave Charlotte the opportunity she needed. She quickly moved closer to Captain Morrison, positioning herself near the one person in the corridor whom she completely trusted to protect her interests and follow proper protocol. "Captain Morrison," Charlotte said quietly, "Queen Camilla wants me to go on the balcony for pictures, but Papa and Mama aren't here, and I don't think they know about it." Captain Morrison's expression remained neutral, but Charlotte could see a flicker of concern in his eyes. He had worked with her parents for years and understood their careful approach to Charlotte's public appearances. "Princess Charlotte, I think it would be best if you return to your morning activities while I discuss some important matters with Her Majesty," Captain Morrison said gently. "Perhaps you could visit Mrs. Henderson in the library as you originally planned." Charlotte nodded eagerly, grateful for the escape route that Captain Morrison had provided. However, as she began to move toward the library corridor, Queen Camilla stepped forward and blocked her path. "Charlotte will remain here until this matter is resolved," Queen Camilla said firmly. "I have made a decision about her public appearance today, and that decision will be carried out." The tension in the corridor became palpable as Captain Morrison and Queen Camilla faced each other in what was clearly a battle of authority and protocol. Charlotte found herself caught in the middle, unsure of what would happen next, but increasingly certain that Queen Camilla's behavior was inappropriate and concerning. Captain Morrison spoke carefully, his words measured and professional. "Your Majesty, I have received instructions from their Royal Highnesses regarding Princess Charlotte's schedule for today. Those instructions do not include any public appearances or balcony events." Queen Camilla's face flushed with anger at this challenge to her authority. Those instructions were made before the current situation developed. "As Queen, I have the authority to modify schedules and make decisions about family appearances when circumstances require it." Charlotte listened to this exchange with growing understanding that something significant was happening in the royal family that she did not fully comprehend. The references to current situation and circumstances suggested that there were problems or conflicts that had prompted Queen Camilla's urgent desire for a public appearance. The young princess remembered conversations she had overheard between her parents about the importance of maintaining proper protocol and never making hasty decisions about public appearances. They had always emphasized that every royal action was scrutinized and interpreted by the media and the public, making careful planning essential. Captain Morrison maintained his professional demeanor while clearly standing firm on protocol. "Your Majesty, I must respectfully insist that any changes to Princess Charlotte's public schedule be approved by her parents. This is not only palace protocol, but also a matter of legal guardianship." The mention of legal guardianship seemed to strike a nerve with Queen Camilla. Her expression became even more determined, and she took a step closer to Charlotte, clearly intending to take direct action regardless of the security staff's concerns. "I am taking Charlotte to the balcony right now," Queen Camilla declared, reaching for the young princess's arm. "Anyone who attempts to interfere with my decision will be removed from their position immediately." Charlotte instinctively pulled away from Queen Camilla's reach, her alarm growing as the situation escalated. She looked to Captain Morrison for guidance. hoping that he would continue to protect her and follow proper protocol despite Queen Camilla's threats. The corridor fell silent for a tense moment as everyone present realized that the confrontation had reached a critical point. Charlotte could hear her own heartbeat and the distant sounds of the crowd outside, waiting for a royal appearance that she increasingly understood should not happen. Captain Morrison made a subtle gesture to his officers, and Charlotte noticed them positioning themselves more strategically in the corridor. It was clear that the security team was preparing to take action if necessary to protect her and maintain proper protocol. Queen Camilla seemed to recognize the shift in the security team's posture. Her eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation, clearly realizing that her authority was being challenged by people who were prioritizing protocol and the princess's safety over her direct orders. "You are all making a serious mistake," Queen Camilla said, her voice low and threatening. "I will remember this defiance, and there will be consequences for everyone involved." Despite the threat, Captain Morrison remained steady. "Your Majesty, my primary responsibility is the safety and well-being of all members of the royal family, including ensuring that proper protocols are followed. I cannot authorize Princess Charlotte's public appearance without her parents' explicit consent." Charlotte felt a mixture of relief and continued anxiety as she watched the adults around her navigate this difficult situation. She was grateful that Captain Morrison and his team were protecting her, but she remained worried about what had prompted Queen Camilla's unusual behavior and what it might mean for the royal family. The young princess also began to worry about the crowd of photographers and journalists who were still waiting outside. They would certainly notice if no royal family members appeared on the balcony, and they might create stories or speculation about what was happening inside the palace. As these thoughts raced through Charlotte's mind, she heard new footsteps approaching rapidly from the main palace entrance. The sound was familiar, and her heart leaped with hope as she recognized the quick, purposeful stride that could only belong to one person. Captain Morrison's expression showed a hint of relief as he too recognized the approaching footsteps. He spoke quietly into his communication device, confirming what Charlotte already suspected and hoped. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by additional security personnel and the unmistakable sound of urgent but controlled movement through the palace corridors. Charlotte knew that help was coming, and she felt her anxiety beginning to ease for the first time since Queen Camilla had approached her near the library. Queen Camilla also seemed to recognize the significance of the approaching footsteps. Her expression shifted from determination to concern, and Charlotte could see that she was reconsidering her position as the situation changed around her. The confrontation in the corridor was about to take a dramatic turn, and Charlotte found herself holding her breath as she waited to see what would happen next. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and she knew that the next few moments would determine the outcome of this strange and frightening morning. Everything that had seemed certain just minutes ago was about to change, and Charlotte prepared herself for whatever was coming next, grateful that she had trusted her instincts and that the palace security team had protected her from a situation that she now understood was far more complex and serious than she had initially realized.